point did you reflect or go back to Michigan State?
Yeah. Well, I mean, throughout the tournament, I thought about how just fate played a role, because obviously none of that happens on Saturday and Sunday if Michigan State's right fielder catches the ball in the ninth inning. And this storyline that we're talking about and the conversation around Will Bolt is completely different if the guy just closes his glove or is an inch to his left and it goes into the webbing instead of hitting off the heel. So yeah, I mean, you talk about baseball being a crazy sport, and like stuff like that can happen in any sport where there's just one moment and then it's a butterfly effect of things that happen, an avalanche of change. I thought about it, and going into the tournament, like I didn't really like Nebraska's chances to win 4 in a row because that's just such a hard thing to do. And Nebraska hasn't shown that kind of consistency all season, hadn't up until that point. Like, had Nebraska won 4 in a row? I'm not sure. I don't know that Nebraska had won 4 games in a row.
Look, they hadn't.
I don't think so.
Right. Okay. So, but then after the Michigan State thing happened, it didn't really surprise me. Like, they got to Saturday, and at that point, Oregon, I think, wanted to go home. And what a miserable experience for Oregon. I feel for Oregon, and I talked to Mark Wasikowski, the Ducks coach, on Sunday when they got to Omaha, when they just bust over from Iowa City, where Oregon had just won the Big Ten regular season. And they spent like 6 days in Omaha without anything happening. Like, and then it rained on Friday night, like not throwing a meaningful pitch until Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So, like, no wonder that Oregon was a little bit off its game. And that's, and then they fall to 12 in the Monday selection show and see Oregon State get the 8 that they thought they were going to get. Like, it's all just a mess for Oregon. Like, they got to just be angry right now. But for Nebraska, once the Michigan State thing happened, yeah, it seemed like it was all fate at that point.
So, bigger surprise for you for Nebraska, the way they were able to take advantage of that opportunity that Michigan State gave them, or that the pitching held up over the course of the tournament, especially the starting pitching?
Well, the thing that worked to Nebraska's advantage in this format is that it didn't have to come back. It didn't have to play 5 or 6 games. And I realize if you stay in the winner's bracket, it's only 4 in the old format. But like a year ago, when Nebraska lost its first game and then had to win 5 in a row, I mean, that puts a huge stress on your pitching staff. And it probably carries over into regionals. Not to say that Nebraska would have got past Florida or Oklahoma State in the region last year if it didn't have to win 5 in a row in Omaha. But like, you go into regionals just in a decidedly better position just with your arms because you only had to play 4 games. I mean, it was an incredible performance by Ty Horn on Sunday to do what he did on shorter than normal rest. But other than that, they really just kind of played their game with the pitching staff. I probably would have been surprised if you had told me that it held up like that over a conference tournament after Mason McConaughey went down and Nebraska was struggling to find somebody to fill that Friday night role. But they did find, it's not like Tucker Timmerman on Friday night has been going out there and throwing, 7 innings of 2-hit ball. Like, he's just been getting the job done. And if it's 4 innings, it's 4 innings. Like, they've really found something, I think, and credit to Rob Childress for being willing to do something different. Like, they don't have somebody to match up against Kyson Witherspoon, Oklahoma's stud, that they're going to see.
He's
on
the best that they'll
Friday.
See.
Probably. I mean, it's hard to say that like somebody's better than Joseph Giroux, the Michigan State guy.
Give me OU. You'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Witherspoon's a first-round pick, and I don't know that Giroux is. He's probably more like a third-rounder, but I mean, like, it's splitting hairs. Witherspoon is a first-team All-SEC pitcher, which means that he's ready. Talking to Cags yesterday about that, like, he said that like the stuff that he saw in Double-A from the pitchers was more electric than what he had seen in Triple-A so far. He might think differently after going 0 for 5 last night with 3 strikeouts. But no, seriously, like the SEC pitching, like top line pitching, is like Double-A pitching, and Witherspoon for sure is right there. And so is the guy from North Carolina. I don't know what North Carolina is going to do with their pitching, but they've got they've got that 6'8" guy.
They got options in that ballpark plays to good defense. I actually thought Nebraska got a good draw with its teams because it's not an offensive 4-team region. It's a offensive pitching heavy. The ballpark doesn't play big. If you're going to be a 3 and had to play your way to get in, that's
about best case scenario.
It ain't ideal, but North Carolina is just now starting to hit the ball. Oklahoma has had its struggles outside of Spoon. Like it's you can at least manage it.
It could be worse. We'll say that. But they're not going to one of those places where you look at it and you go, "Oh, that's ripe for a 3 seed." I think you're right in that it fits Nebraska's style, like with the kind of baseball that Nebraska wants to play.
They don't win 9 games, right? I mean, it's just not
Last year was not. Last year going to Oklahoma State, which is just a total bandbox, and having to face Caglione and the Gators and Oklahoma State, that was the opposite of this. This fits Nebraska's style. Now the matchups might not be great, but it fits their style, where last year it was, as a 2 last year. So it's like you could be a 2 or a 3, and you can be in better position as a 3 than you could be as a 2. And I think Nebraska is this year, despite some really, really difficult pitching matchups that favor their opponents.
It's funny you mentioned how we view Bolt vastly different in just over a weekend, right? Because we talked today about.
I don't know. I do.
I don't know what they're gonna do with like staff changes now. Does that mean you don't have to address some things that were whatever? And it's just interesting how sometimes that happens to coaches like Napier or Day or.
Napier's a good example. Yeah.
They're just guys where it's like, even Day, like a year ago at this time, it was, well, they better and highest NIL. And now it's like, wait, I know he's lost to Michigan 5 times in a row, but
did win that natty.
Isn't it crazy how sports works like that? Freeman lost to Northern Illinois and got a long-term deal.
Played for the national championship. I mean, you're allowed to lose a game.
That does help.
Yeah. With Will, and he knows this, but whatever happened last weekend was fantastic. But you can't let that blind you to the fact that there were some things through this season that are going to need to be addressed in this offseason. And I don't know what that means for him. I don't know if that means you adjust some things with responsibilities on the staff, or if you make a change somewhere on the staff or whatever, you just refocus. But all of the things that went wrong for Nebraska, like in the fundamentals of the game and some of the hitting stuff in March, April, May, it's not just better because they beat Oregon and Penn State and UCLA in a span of 36 hours. That's fantastic, but you're doing Nebraska baseball a disservice if you gloss over the issues that existed for this team, because Nebraska was good enough. And look, losing your ace pitcher, that's a big blow. And they get a lot of credit for how the pitching staff regrouped and playing with 3 starters injured in the championship game on Sunday. That's a resilient bunch for sure. But they were a good enough team, I think, at the beginning of the year where the expectation should have been, you're not on the bubble. You don't have to play your way in with an auto bid, and you should have been in the conversation to host. That's where Nebraska needs to get to a place where you're in the conversation to host. And all of that stuff is still very valid as they enter the the off season whenever this run ends.
So, Mitch, which do you think is closer to being true? That towards the end of the year, whether it's the 5 straight series wins to get off of the Big Ten tournament bubble and into and then the run through the Big Ten tournament, do you think that's closer to being the team that they always should have been, or do you think that run glosses over some real larger issues that need to be addressed?
I think that's the team that they should have been. They had the talent, and they're one thing that Will is clearly really good at with his teams is getting them out of a corner. They were 1-8 in the Big Ten, and I think a lot of teams and a lot of programs and a lot of coaches wouldn't know how to handle that. I've seen that with Nebraska baseball, where went through a bad stretch and you just start reeling, and the next thing you know, the season is kind of lost. And they, that could have happened. I mean, if Nebraska would have lost to Michigan State, we'd probably be sitting here saying it did happen, although they played much better baseball in the second half of the season, winning a bunch of series and, doing things like beating Oregon State out of league. So it's unfair to say, even if Nebraska had lost to Michigan State last Tuesday, it's unfair to say that the season unraveled after they went 1-8 to start the conference season, because they did start playing better baseball. But yeah, I mean, the team that we saw at the end, I think that's who Nebraska is. I think that's Nebraska reflecting the characteristics of its coaching staff. Those guys are fighters. Like, I've known Will and Rob, Damon, you have, for a long time, and like they're if they're nothing if not fighters, and the team reflects that. So you got it. The challenge is to take that fighting mentality and then be able to play that way and do those kind of things when your back isn't against the wall. And, I'm sure that's something they'll address over the next several months.
How do you, and it's just one of the other cool things about baseball, whether it's Gabe Swanson or Jackson Brockett, like, isn't it weird how they're just sometimes these guys that it just in the moment or for the moment or because this is the stage that you just get their best. Like, you may not see it consistently any other time except when it matters. Like, it's just one of the cool things I think about sports. It's like you look at Brockett, and I was saying this in one of our baseball group chats over the weekend. I'm like, how is it that this guy is the most nails when he needs to be? We don't talk about it any other time except when he has to be on, he is.
Right. If Nebraska ends up Saturday in an elimination game against Oklahoma, like the 1-1 game in Chapel Hill, and Jackson Brockett took the ball and went out and threw 8 innings, you would not be surprised. Yeah. Or Will Walsh, same kind of thing.
But if you give him a midday start against K-State and he gives up 4, you're going to be like, oh man, we got to find a Sunday guy.
Well, okay. Remember when Will Bolt came to Nebraska and things were getting started with Dave Van Horn, and they had guys like Chad Wiles and Scott Freeze. It was the same thing. It was this. I'm missing some names there because there were about 5 of those pitchers, RD Spees, who you just, okay, we're in a corner. We got to win 5 games in 4 days in the Big 12 tournament. The pitchers are going to get it done. We know that. Like, just give them the ball. They're going to go out and throw 100 pitches and give us a chance to win. And this staff right here has definitely adopted some of those traits.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, before we move off of baseball, this is totally random, but you'll know because this is in your wheelhouse. And I'm not necessarily going to die on this hill, but I'm telling you, do you know who we forget about in Nebraska baseball lore that was great?
Ken Harvey.
No.
Johnny Dorn.
Everybody goes to Harvey. You got 93, man. I watched Sagmoin kill the. He slugged 859. He hit 459, 18 home runs, 79 RBIs. He's like 5'11", 185, and that guy could rake. Do you remember?
That is very random.
Do you remember? You remember Sagmoin?
Yeah, well, not really. I mean, was his last year the spring of '93? Is that right?
I think it was
either in
3 or 4. It was right in our wheelhouse.
I didn't see a lot of him. I've heard some stories for sure, but I might not have seen any of him in person because I wasn't going down to Buck Belzer to watch games when I was in high school.
I was like a crybaby that somebody wouldn't let me come in their house watching those games.
I mean, I'd like to see. And I'm sure the answer is it was good, but like what he did against Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and the teams in the Big 8 that had pitchers that were headed onto professional careers. Like, I don't think that he put up those numbers against Peru State and some of the teams that John Sanders liked to schedule, but it might have padded his stats a bit if he had like a 5-for-5 day on a Tuesday when they scheduled the game 4 hours before the first pitch.
That was wild. And so these guys are laughing, but do you remember how much hand-wringing and consternation there was over the field usage that we shared? And sometimes we didn't even know that they were playing.
Well, that did happen. It's a nice day in February. Call up Wayne State. Like they can get
why
here.
Are you guys out here? Anyway.
Yeah, and they didn't know that there was going to be a giant hole in right field where somebody, somebody's cleats had gotten stuck, and you lost the baseball, and a single turned into a triple.
And they just argue, and it's like, is this how coaches get along? But anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Can I just say, you brought up Johnny Dorn. Like, am I the only one that wanted them to let that guy hit in college?
Oh yeah,
that dude mashed at Grand Island.
Sweet.
As third baseman.
Oh yeah.
I was when they were like, oh no, he's a pitcher. I was like, are you sure? Are we positive?
Same thing I said about Jordy Bahl watching her in high school. I'm like, how's she not hitting at Oklahoma?
Like that dude could rake.
First thing I asked her on the podcast, Mitch, I was like, hey, are you gonna miss hitting? And she goes, well, I'm pitching's hard enough, and it's my first year. I'm just gonna be a freshman. I'm just gonna do whatever they ask. I'm like, man, she rakes.
They probably should have let her hit.
Well, they were still winning. They were still winning natties. It didn't matter.
I liked what Troy Dannon said about her last night. I think that probably puts it in as good of perspective as I've heard, just about her as the ultimate competitor and how he's not been around an athlete who just like demands the best of everyone around them. Or it's very rare to find somebody who demands the best of everyone around them in the same way that Jordy did. Like there's going to be excitement around Nebraska softball going into next season that has certainly never existed before. So it's going to be fun to watch. It's disappointing for sure to see them lose 1-0 like they did on Sunday, but get ready for the hype train going into next year. It'll be fun. They want to be obviously at home on that weekend next year, so they've got the last at bats and the chance to go to OKC. It would only be fitting. It would be difficult to accept if Jordy Bahl's college softball career comes to an end anywhere other than Oklahoma City.
It's funny you talk about that, Mitch, and how because Troy was lamenting about that last night, and all I could think of if how it's widely appreciated now, and the coaches like with the bat for it, and we didn't talk about it as much early because there wasn't as many vehicles to talk through. But the characteristics he was describing reminded the first person I thought of was T. Fraze, where
yeah, she's that kind of rare.
You just couldn't be off or not laying it on the line, or you were going to hear about it. And he was saying it to and carrying himself like that around a lot of other good players, and he wasn't the oldest. So for him to still do it was amazing to see. Like he demanded your best at all times. It is incredible.
It's a great comparison, and she has a chance to leave that kind of legacy on Nebraska softball, the kind of legacy that he left. Yeah, I'd imagine there's probably some players in the locker room for Nebraska softball who aren't necessarily in love with the way that she acts sometimes.
Part of it. I say it all the time. Sometimes you got to be a good follower.
Yeah.
Like I asked Coach Ravel that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to be a good follower, and your culture has to be willing to take that on. Like that's part of the magic. It just is.
Because that's part of what I was going to ask, right? Because you brought up T. Fraze when Mitch is talking about kind of that mentality. I go to Michael Jordan and Kobe, right? Famously guys that had some locker room issues with people who didn't want to live up to that standard, right? Like, and I know you've told me about T. Fraze where it's like, yeah, some guys maybe weren't vibing with him.
Him and Uyghur, yeah.
But it's like, hey, that's the standard. It seems like it's more well received with the softball locker room than it is in some of those situations.
But it's cool, though,
but it's still hard.
People talk about that dynamic openly, right? It's not like this. It's not a super secret that it actually matters. We didn't used to talk about it like that, I don't think.
So who can be that kind of guy for Nebraska football now?
I mean, you'd want it to be Dylan. You'd want it to be him.
Yeah.
I don't think it's his personality. I mean,
I don't either.
It's not
that specific type of leadership, I don't think.
He can still be a great leader, but you can't make someone they're not.
Yeah, I think it's probably somebody that's a little harder edged than him.
It reminds me a little bit of Gifford.
Just a little mean-spirited almost.
But he's gone. Offense, I you know what? I would prefer that it's somebody on offense. You know who I wish it was? Because he's a really good player. He practices hard. I wish.
Emmett?
No.
Oh.
I wish it was my favorite, Squatty Body, playing him at center now.
Justin Evans.
Spirited, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish it was.
Could he maybe be that guy? Like
I know it's a concerted effort for him to work on it. He's told a couple of the guys, like, I know that's part of the evolution of my game. It could definitely be Justin Evans. He is. I enjoy being around him, not because I'm afraid, but because there's just a way to do business. He's a lot like his position coach. No nonsense, quick to cuss you out, but he does it from a place of love, and he uses his words carefully. He he may only wake up with like a 12, 15 word quota, and 4 of them maybe get your ass in gear, but it's our 3.
Well, the center's a good place to get that from.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I hope it's him, at least part of it, but he doesn't.
Why do you want it to be on offense?
Because defense is going to get it.
Okay,
defense has their dogs. They don't have they have their dogs. Sierra Wright, Shavers.
Shavers was the guy I thought of. Shavers seems like you don't want to mess with him.
They got their guys. I'd love it. I'd love a guy on offense because it's gonna matter. I think for that team's temperament because Dylan's really, really cool. He's a calm, cool customer, and that has its place in crunch time. But sometimes you need a guy that
you need the other side of the coin too.
Yeah. Like it's go time.
Anybody pop in your head, Mitch, while we're talking about this?
Yeah, I thought of that name. I thought of Justin Evans too when it was kind of ruminating. I think it'd be great if it could be on the offensive line and the center. There's no better place than the center. So I think there are other players on the team like that potentially have that in them. But it's harder if you're new to the program. Like I think it's tough for Rocco Spindler or Marcus Watson-Trent to come in with all that they've accomplished in college football. Like I think they have that in them, but like Justin Evans has been there and he's been there through a coaching transition and those kind of players, I think now because there aren't very many of them on the roster, like they earn a certain level of respect with everybody else. Like if you've been dragged through the mud at Nebraska and like it's going to carry weight with the rest of the team. So yeah, I like that. I like that thought. I agree with you about defense. Like you're going to have big personalities that step up here and there, but like they don't have to play with that necessarily. Like they don't have to have that kind of, you're coming with me or you're getting left behind kind of mentality.
I got one.
And yeah,
I got one.
Who do you got?
He's mean-spirited. Hunter's like that. But I know he's a wide receiver and he's super far away from the ball sometimes, but he'll hold you accountable. He'll hold you accountable.
Yeah, a new guy. So I liked what I heard from him.
In
the spring for sure. Yeah.
All right, Mitch. Are you an auto qualifier guy?
Am I an auto? Oh, on the football talk with the CFP. I don't think it's necessary. I think that like if you just leave it to the if you leave it to the committee, I don't know. I'm a little bit torn. I suppose if I wasn't in this camp where I followed the Big Ten closely, I'd be like, heck no, absolutely not. Let the best teams have the spots. But it's inevitable that we're going to a place like that. That every day it seems that the Big Ten and the SEC's out there, saying what needs to be said, and the Big Ten's like, yeah, they're supporting them behind the scenes. Like if you are a fan of a Big Ten program and you take any kind of issue with like the stuff that Greg Sankey's saying, and you use the word sanctimonious when we talked earlier, and that's like the exact word, or self-righteous that came into my mind when he said, basically like, there's no reason for the SEC to act in the greater good of college sports because we're already the greatest thing that's ever happened to college sports. Like that's basically what they were saying.
Yeah.
Like incredibly short-sighted, but that's fine.
I'm fine with it because it's just where we are. Like, okay, whatever. If it makes the job of the committee a little bit easier. Like I think those guys have been put over the years in unfair spots because there hasn't been the right kind of definition about what they're picking. So now if you just say this conference is getting this many, this conference is getting this many, like basically their job is going to be to get into a room every week and decide whether Notre Dame is worthy of an at-large spot. And so maybe they could just do that on Zoom instead of meeting. But
because I basically leave it to right. It's like, okay, does Notre Dame get a spot? Is it a fifth Big Ten team, a fifth SEC team, or do we give one of the other two a third spot?
And who's the best team from the group of 5 leagues?
Makes their job a lot easier. You're right.
It does. And I'm fine with that. Like, I'm fine with the committee not having so much on their shoulders.
Even without the same criteria, like number of conference games. I mean, Sankey says something out. I lost my mind the other day when it's like, in Dellinger and McMurphy tweeted it out about, the easiest schedule and to win games. And I'm like, number one, it's always been that way. Like, Nebraska was a victim of it. Oh, they're 12-0, but who'd they play? Oh, they only played Penn State in the non-con. And okay. So we've heard this forever. Remember the Big 2, and it's not really the Big 8, and one meaningful game a year. So it's always been that way. But what somebody says it, and it's like, well, no kidding. Like, what's the incentive to schedule games? But apparently 8 conference games and a bye game in November is like what we're championing as the way to go when we're letting the spokesperson talk about 8 auto qualifiers. It doesn't seem right. 8 games and a bye game in November, Mitch. This isn't like a Big Ten honk just riding with the Big Ten. It's like they don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And we're okay with it.
Right. And their argument is that they play better teams every week to week within their league, which, all right. I mean, they're better by what measure? By the
self-fulfilling prophecies. I mean,
yeah, it's a lot of. It just seems like there's a lot. I mean, I don't argue. The SEC has earned its spot. They've had great teams, and you see it every year. It's validated by what happens in the NFL draft. They have great players. They have great teams. They have great coaches. They have the commitment to win is second to none. But at some point, like, we got to be playing on an even playing field, especially if you're talking about like these 2 leagues that are running the show, and they're supposedly in lockstep and going to take the sport wherever it needs to go. So, all right, when you compare what the Big Ten is doing to what the SEC is doing on a week by week basis, they should be the same. They should be playing the same number of conference games. I don't really give much credence to any argument that says otherwise.
That's our guy, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, appreciate the time.
Another S word, very succinct.
As always, appreciate you letting us kind of run all over the place here with you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks,
all right,
Mitch.
Thanks, guys.